Hey, what is up everybody, Reubin here. My name's Reubin and welcome back to Car Mechanic Simulator 2015. So, in the last episode we got a couple more jobs done. We're now sitting on 1,810 XP and we've almost got $9,000 to our name. So once again, as per usual, we're going to have a look at what jobs are available to us. And I think this time we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do the Malak. I don't know how to pronounce that car's name. But as you can see, I think there are two subsections of problems with the vehicle, and it is a special vehicle. Now it looks like an old classic, quite cute, quite nice, but let's have a look. Let's see. So this one, quite simply, the front crankshaft bearing needs to be replaced. Now that's relatively simple. That can be accessed from underneath the car, and the new timing bolt is the cam gear, the small cam gear, and the timing chain. Now the thing is, normally I would just go into the car parts in order to get hold of everything that I need. But on this one, there is a specific section for all Malak or all parts specific to this car. I can't pronounce this car's name, so I'm not going to bother trying any further. But this area is where you specifically buy parts for this vehicle. Now it helps, especially if you're trying to do a classic restoration, to find all of the parts right here. So let's have a look. So the first thing I needed on this vehicle in the knocking noise from the engine bay was a front crankshaft bearing. So let's have a look. So quite simply, it's just a case of a front crankshaft bearing. There we go. I think that's actually got something to do with the wheel. You see, I'm not too familiar with this vehicle. I don't actually do a lot of work on this car, but we'll see how it goes. So this one, we need the cam gear and the small cam gear, and both of them for this vehicle. So gear, cam gear, there we go, and one small cam gear. And then the last thing we need for this vehicle is the timing chain and timing chain. There we go. So we can move this thing over to the left lifter. Now while that has gone over to that side, I want to have a look. Do we possibly have another one? So we could possibly take two jobs for the exact same car. And I think we're going to do exactly that, because it's stating that the car is hard to control. So we need to figure out what is going wrong with it. So the front knuckle pin, the front steering knuckle, and the outer tie rod. So knuckle pin and tie rod, let's pick up those two pieces first. Outer tie rod. We need the knuckle pin, I think it was. Front knuckle pin, that's correct. Front knuckle pin, tie rod, and steering knuckle. And it's the front steering knuckle if I'm not mistaken. Front steering knuckle, that's the one we need. Okay, so we've got both of the vehicles over here, and the nice thing is we're actually working on the same car. Nice. Wait for those to go up. Okay, so let's have a look. This one was the one that needed the front crankshaft bearing. So as always, we're going to switch over. Now, this is where it sometimes becomes a little bit more difficult, because as you can see, the condition of this engine as it stands right now is not exactly very good. There's quite a lot of rust on a lot of the parts, so it can become difficult to find out where exactly the most problematic parts are. Now, specifically, a knocking noise from the engine bay, front crankshaft bearing, and new timing parts. The timing parts for this, I'm guessing, will be over here somewhere. But honestly, I have got no idea. That's the generator. That's the fuel pump. Timing cover. Centrifugal oil filter. I have honestly got no idea where one or two of these parts need to go. I thought basically the way it looked, specifically the front crankshaft bearing, I thought that by the way it looked, I thought it had something to do maybe with the suspension, probably one of the wheel hub caps, but no, I was wrong. It's a lot more in depth than that. So we simply need to just run through this and find the part. So we'll start off by taking off this. Then we'll go ahead and remove the centrifugal oil filter. And then quite simply remove the serpentine belt, remove the crankshaft pulley, and the timing cover. Holy shit, that's got a lot of parts. Now later on, I know for a fact, because I've done it in my own world, this standard engine that you're seeing over here, it's a small little basic engine, possibly max about 100 horsepower. Later on, if you want to and you've got the cash and obviously you've done what is needed, you could slap a V6 into this thing. Yes, this tiny little freaking car, you end up slapping a V6, a set of Jag Racing slicks, you replace some of the parts with some custom parts, and you end up putting about 400 to 500 brake horsepower in this small little chassis. It does the quarter mile in, I think, about 13, maybe 12 seconds. So obviously not great, but a shitload better than what the standard vehicle would ever have been capable of. And I think I've been able to find both parts of here, because we've got the cam gear, and we've got the small cam gear. And we've got the bearing, front crankshaft bearing there as well. So, I think we found the parts that I need. And it looks like it's all part of the timing section. So we'll just go ahead, we'll remove these chains. The timing chain needs to be replaced in any case as well. And then we can jump in over here. There's a small cam gear, and there's the front crankshaft bearing. So I think all the parts we needed were literally right here by the timing section. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot of work on this vehicle. So it was actually quite interesting to find out where the parts go on this one. That's the new, what is this called? That was the new front crankshaft bearing. Now comes the new small gear, the new timing chain, and the new cam gear itself. Now I do believe that once this is bolted into place, we'll just check our work order. But I do believe that was everything on this car. Yes, it was. So we'll slap the old parts back on. Bolt these beautiful thing back into place. This whole car could actually do with a full restoration, to say the least. We'll put the centrifugal oil filter back on. Put the serpentine belt back on. And then put the fuel pump back into place as well. Now, I do believe that is everything I took off this car. So, luckily this time we didn't have to do a lot. We didn't have to run around and almost strip the entire car apart. We were able to find those parts relatively easy. Now, this one, as far as I remember, was quite simply the front knuckle pin, the front steering knuckle, and the outer tie rod. Now, I'm guessing that's all in the front of the vehicle. Obviously, the front knuckle pin and the front knuckle steering knuckle will be in the front. And I think the outer tie rod is only an option on the front of the vehicle. So, we'll start off once again with the rim. And we'll remove that first. Okay, we'll slide out the cap. We'll remove the drum brake. And then we'll have a look. Now, this is the front steering knuckle. This is the part that needs to be replaced. I don't think, however, that this is the tie rod that needs to be replaced. I don't think so, because it looks like on that side we've got... There's the outer tie rod that needs to come off. Okay, so on this side, it's the outer tie rod and the front knuckle pin. On this side, it's quite simply just the front steering knuckle. But in order to get to it, we need to basically take off almost everything. And that includes the brake shoes. That includes the wheel cylinder. Then the wheel hub itself. And then everything connected to it from the back. So that's the outer tie rod on this. Including the shock absorber itself. And then the upper suspension arm and the lower suspension arm. Oh no, I first need to oh, I can't do that. Small rubber bearings first. Like I said, this is one I am not too familiar with. Remove that one. Okay, now that that's out, we can remove the front suspension arm. And we still need to remove the rubber bushing from there. And then along with this, oh my gosh. In order to get this thing off, I basically have to remove the entire suspension arm. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's have a look here. That's the front brakes. I don't need to remove that. I need to remove this in order for that to come off. That needs to come down. So honestly, with this one, it's new to me as well. I have not done the front suspension on a vehicle like this before yet. This will be a new one for me as well. Okay, so now that that's off, we can remove the front steering knuckle from that side. But before we put everything back on, I want to get the two parts off on this side as well, so we can do a complete rebuild and then finish off the job. So once again, the cap comes off, the drum brake comes off. Now the drum brake's off, can I access the back? Yes, I can. I didn't even have to take off the drum brake, because I can access both the knuckle pin and the outer tie rod simply from over here. This side, remove that small bearing. And then remove the knuckle pin itself. Okay, so now we switch over to assembly mode and we put the new parts back into place. As you can see, the difference is amazing. The old parts are rusted, probably what you would expect from a nice classic vehicle. They're rusted, they're old, they're falling apart. A classic restoration on this vehicle could do it a world of good. And possibly with it being a classic, it might simply bring in quite a lot more if it was fully restored. All original parts, but 100% condition. Could possibly be expensive, but possibly well worth it when it comes to the profits that you make off of it. Because if you had to do a full classic restoration on this vehicle, you'd have to replace all these parts. Now, if you've got the skill, remember what I mentioned about the repair station, you could quite simply repair some of the parts. But I prefer buying the parts brand new. That way I know there's no risk of me possibly fucking it up. And I know that all the parts that will then go into the vehicle are 100% brand new. So we'll put the suspension back into place. Okay, those are bolted back on, and now we can go ahead and we can put the wheel cylinder back on, put the horseshoe back into place, sliding the wheel hub, and then put on the wheel hub bearing, bolt that into place, set the drum brake on, bolt it back into place. And it's just simply a case of the cap and then the wheel itself. Now the wheel is not going to go on until everything else is on, because we need to put the rubber bushing back into there. We need to replace that front suspension arm, get a view on it. Come on, bolt. There we go. And now simply a case of the front knuckle pin on this one. Don't replace it with the old one. Put the bushing in on this side. The bushing in on that side. The outer tire rod in the front. Bolt it back into place. And then it's just the shock absorber left if I'm not mistaken. Come on, let's access that part. There we go. That allows us to put the wheel back into place. 4 bolts, nice and quick, nice and simple. And I do believe that that is everything on this vehicle as well. Yes, it is $198 spent on the job. That mathematically does not make sense. 198 plus 99 plus 99 does not equal 792. Oh well, I won't complain. We got a nice little bonus from finishing off that job. Beautiful. And as always, we're going to sell off. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have still got all of the old parts. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I need to obviously sell all of this. So I'm more interested in the engine blocks. You see, we got $344 from selling that old engine block. We could possibly repair it, but don't have the skill to do so. It's at 28%, so it is pretty ruined. And we get a nice $344 from selling that. Intake manifold, $30. Fuel direct fuel rail, $21. So, like I said, in the beginning, when you can't repair things, it is very beneficial to just sell off everything. Because as you can see, we've just hit our next 1000 XP. We're on 2078. We've got $10,000 in our account, so we can possibly have a look at upgrading the next thing. Now, the next thing that I normally go for is the fast assembly and disassembly. This just allows the jobs to go a lot quicker, because we can slap and put things into place and put them on a lot easier. But I think what I'm going to do in this one is get the tablet. Now the reason why I'm getting the tablet is because it allows me to not have to run back there every time to order the parts. While I'm here by the vehicle, I can simply just bring up the tablet and order the parts that I need. So it doesn't, it prevents me, it just makes the working time, the overall work in progress, a lot quicker, because I don't have to run back and forth to the computer to check the parts. So let's have a look. What's the next job? Now, as you can see later on, we start having a look at some beautiful cars. Like there's the Salem Spectre Fastback. Now, as you can see, it's got quite an extensive job list on it. But unfortunately, you need 3,352 XP just to try and do that job. But the next thing we're going to do is the Royal Crown. Controlling of the car, once again, feels loose. We've got the Reno Piccolo, where there's a lack of engine power and the car's filters needs to be replaced. That's probably, once again, just the air filter, the fuel filter, and the oil filter. Very easy jobs. The lack of engine power, however, could be something different. So let's possibly take that one. I feel like that job could possibly be a lot bigger, depending on what the engine problem is. If the engine problem is quite simply just something like a spark plug, it's relatively easy. If it's the crankshaft or piston, it's difficult. So engine power is just the fuel filter and the intake manifold. So once again, very, very easy job. And the intake manifold is mentioned in this list and in this list, but it only needs to be replaced once. So, sorry, the fuel filter. So air, fuel, and oil filter, as I thought. Oh, once again, I remember I don't need to run all the way back, so we can actually move this over. And while that's going up, we'll type in the car parts section, filters. So I need the air filter, the fuel filter, and the oil filter. And then I also need, let's see if I can guess this right. I'm not even going to buy it without checking. Because I need the manifold, but I need the intake manifold for a 1400 direct injection engine. There we go. Am I correct? Intake manifold 1400 direct injection. There we go. Okay, so the first thing we can do is we can jump in over here, replace everything we need to on top. Now that includes removing off the throttle, slipping off the intake manifold, sliding that out of place. And then while I'm here, I can replace the fuel filter because it's nice and easily here at the back. Slap on, no, before we slap on the new intake filter, let's quickly put the fuel filter into place. Put on the new intake manifold, bolt that back into place. The next two are very simple. It just comes in the case of accessing the air filter over here, while first removing off the clips. I think that's the most tedious job out of all of this, is getting these damn clips off. Removing the cover, slipping out the air filter, slapping the new one back into place, and the new cover back on top, and then simply putting the clips back on. And last one. And there we go. Okay, close off the bonnet. The next thing we need to do is under the car. Okay, so now that we're under the car, we can simply scroll around this way. It is this lovely thing over here that's black as night. It's supposed to be a nice, crisp blue. There we go. And that is the job literally done. So, once again, $721 from doing that job. All the parts have been replaced at 100%. So, we are going to go ahead and finish this job. Can I perform? Oh, shit. Okay. I was actually a bit too hasty over there. I forgot to put the throttle back on when I removed the intake. So, it's just a case of doing that. And putting that throttle back on. There we go. This time it's complete. Thought I was going to do it nice and quickly. So we do have time for one more job. And the job I think we're going to do on this one. Let's have a look. Ooh, that's a beautiful car. The Del Rey Imperator. Obviously, they're not using the real names of vehicles. Obviously, the vehicles will have serious likeness to their real life counterparts, but obviously due to licensing they can't use the real vehicle's name. But if that doesn't look like a Dodge Charger, nothing will. And if that fastback doesn't look like a GT500, nothing will. And unfortunately I can't do the fastback or the Imperator, because the Imperator needs 5078 XP, and that is repair all the running gear problems. Car's hard to control, and the gearbox is giving us problems. So I think we're going to take this Royal Crown and we are going to control the car feels loose problem. And once again, list provided. So we're not at the point yet where the game is not actually giving us clarity on what the problem is, because this one is quite simply just the inner and outer tie rods. Once again, very simple jobs. Because there's the inner tie rod, there's the outer tie rod. And then simply a case of moving it over to one of the lifters. Raising it up all the way. Let's take a bet. Before I can actually see the vehicle, is it going to be on the left hand side or the right hand side? I'm going to guess, if I'm looking at it like this, the right hand side, so that would be over there. So let's have a look. Is it there? Oh my gosh, did I just get that right? There's no ways I actually just got that right. Let's remove this so that we can have a look. I did get it right. Yay. Okay, so the outer tie rod comes off. The inner tie rod just simply slips off. Switch over to assembly mode. Put the new one back on. Slap that new outer tie rod into place. Bolt it into its place. And then just slap the wheel back on. I wish mechanics worked this efficiently and this quick in real life. But, alas, they don't. Okay, so I think, given the time that obviously those two jobs took, let's have a look if we can't take one more job. Now the next two jobs is repair all the running gear problems and the controlling of the car feels loose, and then general engine control and repair. Both of those seem like quite big jobs. I'm going to decline the fastback and the Imperator quite simply because it's going to be a while before I'm anywhere close to having the XP in order to fix that. And there's the Echo's Cobra. Now if that doesn't look like a Viper, once again, nothing will. But we're going to take the SUV. We're going to have a look at some of the problems the SUV's got. Once again, it states that its list is provided, so it's going to tell us exactly what the problem is, and holy shit, that's quite a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed. But here we finally get introduced to the parts not discovered section. So quite simply, it's telling you that the car's controlling feels loose. However, it does not tell you what the problem is. Now, later on, you are able to take the car into the test section over here, where it tests the suspension and the brakes, so you can test if there's any problems with that. Later on, through our section over here, through some of these upgrades, the OBD scanner, the compression tester, and the electronic meter, you do tests on a vehicle to find all these faults without manually having to strip the entire car apart to try and find out what the damn problem is. So at the moment though, I don't have any of that, so I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, which means pulling the car apart and finding where those problems are. At least I'm given the notice that the car's controlling feels loose, so it's got something to do with the controlling. So probably something like the outer tire rods or the suspension possibly, but that could also fall under the running gear issues. But one thing that we can also do, and I want to show this part of it because I haven't actually done it, we're going to take this vehicle to the old factory test track. Now, the reason we are going to the old factory test track is quite simple, because over here we're actually going to test the vehicle's acceleration, maneuvering, suspension, and braking. All of this will get tested on this test track. So just wait for it to load up here, and then we'll be able to jump in and have a look. Now, you need to forgive it. It is a car mechanic simulator. It's not a racing simulator. It's not anything like that, so the cars won't look 100% accurate. But it doesn't look bad. So we're going to accelerate the car. Obviously it doesn't have the most speed in the world. Oh shit, okay. Forgive my driving, that was pathetic. But obviously remember, it says that there are problems with the car. So the handling is giving us problems, and the suspension and the running gear. So possibly all of that is being affected by the problems. Here's the suspension test. The car will bounce all over the place once again. And then you quite simply need to brake and stop inside those lines. Okay, now as you can see, not in depth, nothing too fascinating. It's not a case of, oh my gosh, you're going to go around the test track. No, that's simply just a case where you can run 1 or 2 tests. It's short, simple, and sweet. But that way, when we get back to the garage now, we're going to get a breakdown of components that entire course, if you want to call it that, tested. Like the suspension, like the brakes, like the handling, like the acceleration. It's going to test all of that and tell us where some of the problems are. So as we can see straight away, it's telling us about the front drive axle being a problem, the outer tie rods, the inner tie rods, the wheel hub bearings, the sway bars, end links, that's probably on both sides of the vehicle, and then the rear end link. So it's given us some clarity on where the problems are. Now, some of those were mentioned in the first list, but if we switch over to this, it now no longer says parts not discovered. We actually now know where the parts are lying. But I think that is all the time I've got for this episode. So I'm not going to repair this vehicle in this episode. I'll return to it in the next episode. And then after that, I think what I want to do is I want to progress the game a little bit, get to the point where the interesting stuff starts happening, just so that you guys can see what will happen when you've gone through the grind and you have eventually gotten to that point. So I think that's about it from my side, and I do hope you guys are enjoying this episode and this series. If you are, by all means, leave a like, show that love, and subscribe, and I will see all you beautiful people in my next episode. But obviously, until then, cheers.